Boy interrupts wedding yelling, "He's lying." Bride discovers his hidden family. It was the kind of day people dream about. The sun was warm, the sky was soft and blue, and the entire garden was glowing with fairy lights and flowers. Rows of white chairs stretched across the estate lawn, and guests in elegant clothes smiled and whispered as soft music filled the air. At the front, a man in a sharp black tuxedo stood confidently under a flower-covered arch. He smiled, straightened his cufflinks, and laughed with his groomsmen. He looked like the perfect groom. Then, everything stopped. From the back, a loud voice cut through the music and chatter. "Don't marry him! He's lying!" Everyone turned. Standing at the gate was a small boy, no older than 9. His shirt was wrinkled, his little blazer too big for his thin frame. He looked scared, but his voice didn't shake. "He has a secret family," he said. "He already has kids. Please don't marry him." The music came to a screeching stop. The bride, halfway down the aisle, froze in place. Her bouquet trembled. In her hands, gasps spread across the crowd. People looked at one another, confused and whispering. The groom's face went pale. Then he tried to laugh it off. "That's someone's kid pulling a prank," he said, forcing a smile. "Can someone handle this?" But the bride wasn't smiling. She turned slowly, her eyes locked on the little boy. "Let him speak," she said quietly. Security hesitated. "I said let him speak," she repeated, this time louder, her voice stronger. The guard stepped aside. The boy walked carefully down the aisle, holding something in his hand, a folded photo. His hands were shaking. His eyes never left the bride's face. "This is important," he said softly as he reached her. "You need to see this." He handed her the photo. It was slightly crumpled but clear. In it, the groom stood with his arm around a woman. Too small. Children smiled in front of them. It looked like a happy family portrait. The groom's face was calm, his smile warm. The same smile he wore in every photo the bride had seen of him. And on his wrist was a bracelet, a silver one. The same bracelet the bride had given him for their anniversary. The one he said he lost months ago. Her hand flew to her mouth. She looked up at the groom. "You told me you lost this," she whispered. "It's fake," he said quickly. "Photoshop. Someone made this up." The boy shook his head. "It's real. That's Sarah. And those are her kids. He visits them every other weekend. My mom's friend knows her." The bride blinked back tears. The boy looked at her gently. "He's lying to you. He was with them last week. He told Amy he'd come to her dance recital next month." There was silence. Then, slowly, the bride stepped back. The groom reached for her. "Sweetheart, come on. Don't let this ruin your day." She looked at him. Really looked at him. Then she turned to her best friend, who was standing near the front row. "Take me back inside," she said. "I need to think." Her bouquet dropped to the ground. The boy stood still, unsure what to do next. But as the bride walked away, she turned to look at him. "Thank you," she said softly. He nodded. "I just didn't want you to get hurt." The guests were stunned. No one knew what to say. The groom tried to keep smiling, but it didn't work. He looked around, suddenly alone under the wedding arch. Behind him, the perfect cake waited. The band stood frozen, and the chairs, once filled with excited guests, began to empty. And in that moment, the dream wedding turned into something else. A moment of truth. A quiet boy, a broken promise, and a secret that couldn't stay hidden anymore. What would happen next? No one knew, but one thing was clear. This wasn't just a wedding anymore. This was the beginning of something no one saw coming. The music never started again. Guests stood awkwardly in silence, some whispering, others slowly sitting down as they realized the ceremony wasn't continuing. Not yet. The groom was still standing at the altar, eyes fixed on the empty aisle where the bride had just walked away. He looked calm on the outside, but his fingers were twitching, clenching, and unclenching. Inside the bridal suite, the bride sat on a velvet chair in front of a mirror, still in her dress. Her hands trembled as she stared at the photo the boy had given her. She kept looking at the bracelet, her mind racing. Her voice came out in a whisper. He said he lost this. He swore he lost it at the gym. Her best friend stood behind her, watching carefully. "Maybe it's an old picture?" she suggested gently. Maybe there's an explanation." The bride turned slowly. "Then why is he wearing the tie from our engagement dinner? The same one my dad gave him last." "Christmas?" Neither of them spoke. A knock came at the door. It was the groom. "Please, just give me 5 minutes," he said through the door. "That kid, he's lying. Someone put him up to this." The bride didn't answer. She turned back toward the mirror. He knocked again, softer this time. "You know me. You know I love you. Don't let this ruin everything." Her best friend moved toward the door, about to tell him to leave, when the bride stopped her. "Wait," she whispered. "I want to hear what he says." The door opened. The groom stepped inside, roses in his hand. "I just want to talk," he said softly, trying to smile. The bride didn't return the smile. She held up the photo. "Explain it." He looked at the photo, then back at her. "It's old. From before I met you. Someone must have added the bracelet digitally." She cut him off. "Her son said you were just at their house, last week." "That's ridiculous," he snapped, then caught himself and softened his tone. "Babe, he's a child. Kids get confused." She stood up slowly, the layers of her dress shifting with her movements. "He said the girl's name is Amy, and that you promised to go to her recital." His face twitched. Just for a second. A flash of something that wasn't charm, something darker. "You're letting a random kid ruin our wedding?" She walked past him to a table, picked up her phone, and opened one of his messages from 2 weeks ago. "You told me you'd be in Rochester that weekend. You said you had a big client pitch. I even packed your suitcase." Silence. "Were you even in Rochester?" she asked. He hesitated. "Yes, of course, Then why did Eli say he saw you at a house with those kids?" He dropped the roses. "I don't know what kind of game this is," he said, his voice low now. "But I know someone's trying to ruin us." The bride sat back down, suddenly exhausted. "I'm not sure there even is an us," she whispered. He crouched beside her. "We've built a life together. We're getting married. Don't let lies get in the way." "But if they're not lies." "They are lies," he snapped. The best friend stepped in. "She needs time. Let her think." The groom stood up, his hands clenched now. "Fine. But if you walk away today, you're throwing everything away." Then he walked out, slamming the door behind him. The bride looked at herself in the mirror again. Not the dress, not the flowers, not the flawless makeup, just the eyes. They didn't look like a bride's eyes anymore. They looked like someone who had just been pulled out of a dream and wasn't sure what was real anymore. Outside, guests were restless. Some were checking their phones. Others were already whispering theories. A few even approached the boy, who was still standing quietly near the gate. "Who are you?" "One," woman asked. He didn't look up. "Someone who didn't want her to get hurt." The woman nodded slowly. "Well, thank you." The groom, now pacing near the altar, pulled out his phone and made a call. His voice was low but sharp. "She's starting to figure it out. I don't care what you have to do, just fix it. I can't afford for this to get out." Back in the suite, the bride looked at the photo one last time, then set it gently on the table. "She deserves to know the truth," she said quietly, more to herself than anyone else. Who? Her friend asked. The other woman, she said. If this is true, she's living in a lie too. Her voice was steady now. Find her, she said. I need to know everything. And just like that, the bride who had dreamed of a perfect wedding decided she'd rather chase the truth than say, I do, to a lie. It was late afternoon now, but no one had left. The wedding guests lingered, unsure what to do. The cake remained untouched. The music equipment sat silent. The beautiful white chairs were still in place, but the magic of the day had disappeared. Back. Inside, the bride had changed out of her gown and into a soft blue dress. Her hair was still curled from earlier, but now a few loose strands hung around her face. She looked in the mirror once more, not to admire herself this time, but to remind herself of who she really was. She picked up the photo again. It wasn't just an image now. It was a doorway into a life she hadn't known existed. Her best friend came in holding a laptop. I think I found something, she said. The bride leaned in. There's a woman named Lisa who matches the one in the picture. She's tagged in some old photos with your fiancé from 5 or 6 years ago. But get this, she hasn't posted anything about him since then. No mention of a breakup either. And she lives just outside the city, a place called Millwood. The bride felt a knot form in her stomach. So he didn't just lie to me. He lied to her too. They sat in silence for a moment, then the best friend spoke up again. You still have a choice, you know. You don't have to go digging through all this. You could just walk away, leave it all behind. But the bride shook her head slowly. If he lied to me, he could be lying to her. And there are kids involved. If what that boy said is true, those kids think they have a dad. And he's standing out there, trying to marry someone else like they don't even exist. She stood up. I can't just walk away, not without knowing the truth. At the gate, Eli was sitting quietly on the edge of a stone wall. He was still holding his mom's phone, which had the picture saved in it. He looked like he didn't quite belong in the middle of such a big moment, but he also looked like the only one brave enough to speak the truth when no one else would. The bride walked toward him, gently. Hey, she said, sitting beside him. What's your name? Eli, he said quietly. You were really brave today, Eli. He didn't say anything for a second. Then he spoke, eyes still on the ground. My mom didn't want me to come, but I heard her talking to her friend last night. Crying, saying she didn't know what to do, that he was going to marry someone else and pretend like none of them existed. The bride looked at him carefully. Did you hear his name? He nodded. She said it. It was him. Same face, same name, same laugh. She swallowed hard. Did your mom know this woman? Eli shook his head. Her friend did. Her name's Lisa. Her kids call him Daddy, especially Amy. She always draws pictures of him. The bride closed her eyes for a second. He used to tell me he wasn't ready for kids, she whispered. Said we should wait until we were more stable. Eli looked up at her then. That's because he already had them. Those words hit like a punch to the chest. Do you think Lisa knows about me? She asked softly. Eli shook his head again. I don't think so. Sarah said she only found out a few days ago. From a text. It was meant for you. Something about wedding flowers. The bride nodded slowly. She remembered that week. He had been acting strange, distant. She thought it was just nerves. Now, she wasn't so sure. I need to talk to her, she said. Back at the venue, the groom was on the phone again, pacing behind a row of hedges where no one could see him. I don't care how you do it, he said. Delete the photos. Shut down the accounts. I'll pay whatever it takes. From behind the corner, the best friend watched and listened. She slowly took out her phone and pressed record. Meanwhile, the bride sat in a quiet side room with Eli, showing him pictures on her phone. Is this her? She asked, pointing to a woman in an older post. He nodded. Yeah, that's her. That's Amy's mom. She saved the photo and stood up. Then I know where to start. Eli stood too. Are you going to help them? I'm going to help all of us. The sun had started to dip lower, casting golden light over what was supposed to be the happiest day of her life. Instead, it had become the most revealing. But sometimes the truth hurts before it heals, and even though the bride didn't know exactly what she was walking into, she knew one thing for sure. She wasn't going to pretend anymore. Not for love, not for pride, not for a perfect wedding, because real love doesn't hide, and the truth was finally finding its way out. The estate that once held the buzz of wedding joy was now filled with something quieter, uncertainty. The guests hadn't left. Some stayed because they were family. Others stayed because they were curious. A few stayed because something about the truth unfolding before their eyes was bigger than just a wedding. In the corner of the reception lawn, near the tall flower arches, a small group of guests huddled together whispering. Did you hear what the boy said? He claimed the groom had another family. I always thought something about him felt too perfect. A few phones. We're out now. People were searching online, going through tagged photos, checking old social media posts. One bridesmaid who had always felt the groom's answers were too polished found a familiar face in a post from a private account. This woman, she whispered to another bridesmaid. She tagged him once, but he untagged himself. Look, he's wearing the same bracelet in both pictures. One of the bride's distant relatives, an aunt with a sharp eye and a sharper memory, stepped closer. Wait, isn't that the bracelet he said he lost? They zoomed in. The date was clear, just 3 months ago. In the photo, the groom held a child on his shoulders. The child looked a lot like him. Back inside the bridal suite, the bride stood with her best friend and Eli. Her phone buzzed. A bridesmaid had sent her the same photo. Her hands shook slightly as she opened the message. There he was again, in a casual polo shirt, grinning like a man who had no idea the lies were catching up to him. The little boy in the picture rested, comfortably against his neck. No tension, no discomfort, just the kind of closeness you don't fake. Her friend stepped closer. Do you want to leave? I'll drive you anywhere you want. You don't owe anyone an explanation right now. But the bride shook her head. No, I'm not running. He built this whole fantasy life. Now he can watch it fall apart. Downstairs, the groom was still trying to hold it together. His best man stood awkwardly beside him, unsure what to say. Do you think she's actually going to call it off? He asked. The groom scoffed. She's emotional. She'll calm down. It's just some kid trying to stir things up. Once she realizes how ridiculous it all sounds. But his voice cracked halfway through the sentence. His confidence wasn't as smooth now. His hands kept going to his phone. He'd already deleted 3 posts, 2 photo albums, and tried to call Lisa, twice. She didn't pick up. From the tent, a familiar voice spoke up. One of the bride's uncles, who had always been suspicious of the groom. Funny, he said loud enough for nearby guests to hear. For a guy who works so much, he sure had a lot of free weekends. Someone else chimed in. I never understood why she wasn't allowed to visit him during those business trips. The groom stiffened. Meanwhile, the bride and her friend had locked onto something new. A digital receipt. He told me he was in Rochester that weekend, she said, scrolling through her emails. But look at this. His credit card was used at a restaurant in Millwood. Her friend pulled out her laptop. That's the same town the boy mentioned, same one where Lisa lives. The bride closed her eyes. He was with them, while I was planning cake tastings. They looked at each other. No more guessing. It was time to do something. Outside, a server began packing up hors d'oeuvres. One of the wedding planners looked near tears. No one had touched the wedding cake. The white fondant layers with sugar roses just sat there, decorated, perfect, and completely untouched. The bride stepped out of the bridal suite, still in her soft blue dress, her hair pinned up now more out of habit than hope. She walked straight, through the garden, past the guests, past the confused servers, past the stunned officiant. She stopped just a few feet in front of the groom. Everyone watched. She didn't raise her voice. Didn't cry, didn't tremble. "I want the truth," she said. "No more stories, no more pretending." He gave her that smile again, the one that had always worked before. "Sweetheart, let's not do this here. Let's talk privately." "No," she said. "We talk here, or not at all." He looked around. Guests were listening. Phones were out. "Fine," he muttered. "It's not what it looks like." "Then explain it," she said, pulling out her phone. "Explain her. Explain them." He went silent. She showed him the photo. "Explain the bracelet, the child, the location. Explain the weekend you said you were in Rochester." Still nothing. Then, quietly, the bride said, "I know everything." The groom's mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. But no words came. She turned to the crowd. "This wedding is off," she said, voice steady. Gasps, murmurs. Someone dropped a glass. "I won't marry someone who can look me in the eye and lie so easily." She turned back to him, and for the first time, she didn't see the man she once loved. She saw someone who didn't deserve to be a part of her story anymore. The estate's garden was still full of people, but the mood had shifted completely. It no longer felt like a celebration. It felt like the final scene of a play, and no one was sure how it would end. After announcing the wedding was off, the bride didn't cry. She didn't run away. She simply turned and walked back into the bridal suite, her back straight, her expression unreadable. Everyone watched her go, as if something sacred had just happened in front of them. Inside, she shut the door behind her and finally let herself exhale. Her best friend stood nearby, phone still in her hand, recording everything, just in case. "Do you think he'll follow?" the friend asked. "Definitely," she said. "He can't stand not being in control." Sure enough, 5 minutes. Later there was a knock. "Please," the groom said from the other side. "Let me explain." The bride glanced at her friend, nodded once, and the door opened. He stepped inside, his usual smoothness gone. His tie was loose, and his smile wasn't working anymore. "I know how it looked out there," he started, his voice soft. "But none of that means I don't love you. It's complicated." The bride folded her arms. "Then explain it. Every part. Right now. No more deflecting." He hesitated. "I made a mistake," he said finally. "It was years ago, before you and me. I thought it was over. But she used the kids to keep pulling me back in." The bride didn't say anything. "She threatened to tell people," he continued, his voice quickening. "Said she'd ruin my reputation if I didn't keep visiting. I just didn't want to hurt anyone." The bride looked him dead in the eye. "You've been lying to 2 families, maybe more. How is that not hurting anyone?" He moved toward her. "Look, I never planned to fall for you. But I did. And I tried to end things with her. You have to believe that." She stepped back. "She's not the one who showed up at a wedding with a fake story. Her son did, to protect his mother and her kids. From you." His face darkened. "That boy's been spying on me." "He's not innocent in this either." "That boy is braver than you'll ever be," the bride snapped. He gritted his teeth. "So what, you're ending it? You're throwing away everything we've built because of a photo and a kid with a sob story?" The best friend stepped forward. "You need to leave." But the bride raised a hand. "Wait." She pulled out her phone. "I want you to hear something." She hit play. It was his own voice, recorded just an hour earlier, when he thought no one was listening. "She's starting to figure it out. I don't care what you have to do, just fix it." I can't afford for this to get out." His eyes widened. "Where did you get that?" he demanded. The bride stepped closer. "You said you were protecting me, but the only thing you were protecting was yourself." Okay, you're upset," he said quickly. "Let's calm down and talk this out." But the bride was already walking to the door. She opened it, and standing there was a man in a suit, the family lawyer. He stepped in quietly. "Everything's been recorded," the lawyer said calmly. "The audio, the witnesses, the online activity. You've left a long trail." "You set me up?" the groom snapped. "No," the bride said. "You set yourself up. I just finally stopped looking away." His face changed then. No more fake charm, no more calm control. Just anger. Sharp, bitter anger. "You're making a huge mistake," he said. "When this gets out, it'll ruin everyone involved, not just me." "That's the difference between you and me," the bride said. "I'm not afraid of the truth." He looked at her one last time as if trying to scare her into silence. But she didn't flinch. He turned and stormed out. Silence followed for a moment. Then her best friend said, "We got it all. Everything. Every word." The bride let out a long breath and looked down at her phone. Messages were still pouring in. Friends checking on her. Guests asking questions. Even someone from Lisa's family trying to reach out. She sat down slowly, holding the phone in her hands. "I loved him," she said quietly. "Or at least I thought I did. But maybe I just loved the version of him I wanted to be true." Her best friend knelt beside her. "It's okay to feel that, but now you're free. You know what's real now." The bride looked up. "What about the kids? What about Lisa?" Her friend nodded. "We'll find them. We'll tell them everything. And we'll make sure he can't lie his way through another life again." As the sun set outside the window, the bride stood, walked over to the mirror, and looked at herself again. This time, she didn't see a broken woman. She saw someone who had finally faced the truth and survived it. The next morning, the house was quiet. Sunlight spilled through the curtains, soft and golden, but inside it still felt heavy. Like the air hadn't cleared yet. The bride sat at her kitchen table, hair still damp from a quick shower, a warm mug of tea in her hands. She hadn't slept much, but she wasn't crying either. Not anymore. Her phone buzzed. It was her best friend, who had been up most of the night helping her piece everything together. "I found her," the message said. "Lisa, that's definitely her." There was an address. Without waiting, the bride grabbed her jacket and keys and drove. The neighborhood was nothing like the grand estate where the wedding had been. It was quiet, modest. A row of small houses, some with worn fences, others with toys scattered across their yards. She pulled up to the house with the faded blue shutters and sat there for a minute, just watching. On the front steps, a little girl sat playing with chalk. She was drawing stick figures, one tall, two small, and one in the middle holding everyone's hands. A man's figure. The bride's heart squeezed. She got out and walked slowly to the front gate. The girl looked up. Her eyes were wide, curious. "Hi?" the bride said gently. "Is your mom home?" The little girl nodded and ran inside. A minute later, Lisa appeared at the door. At first, she just looked confused, then guarded. But something in the bride's eyes must have softened her defenses. "I'm not here to fight," the bride said. "And I'm not here because of him." Lisa stepped outside, arms crossed, her shoulders tense. "Then why are you here?" The bride took a deep breath. "Because I almost married him yesterday, and I think you deserve to know everything." Silence. Lisa blinked once. Her arms dropped slightly. "I thought I was the only one," she whispered. "He told me the relationship with you ended, that you were just someone he worked with. And then last month I found a text about wedding flowers. I confronted him and he told me it was a mistake, that I was overthinking. I wish I'd seen the signs sooner, the bride said. I wanted to believe everything he told me, but yesterday, a little boy showed up at my wedding. He told me the truth. Lisa looked toward the house. Eli, that was Sarah's boy. She's my friend. She's the one who started connecting the dots after I broke down in front of her. He must have gone on his own. I owe him everything, the bride said. He saved me from marrying someone who had no intention of being honest with anyone. Lisa stepped back and held the door open. You should come in. Inside the house was warm and lived in. Family photos lined the walls, all missing one person. Toys on the floor, drawings on the fridge, shoes by the door. A real home, built by a woman who thought she had a partner. I thought we had a future, Lisa said quietly, sitting across from the bride. He came every other weekend, told the kids he was traveling for work. And when he was here, he was good. He was involved, loving even. He did the same with me, the bride said. I thought we were building a life. He said he wanted kids, someday. But first we needed to grow, to plan. Turns out he already had them. He just didn't want me to know. Lisa's eyes filled, but she didn't cry. I'm tired of being embarrassed, she said. Tired of keeping it quiet so he can keep his life neat and clean. You shouldn't have to stay quiet, the bride said. None of us should. She pulled a folder from her bag. Inside were photos, audio transcripts, statements from guests, the video from the wedding where the confrontation happened. Lisa took it slowly, flipping through the pages. He told me you were obsessed, she said, that you were just jealous of his past. The bride gave a small, sad laugh. He said you were the past, that you didn't matter. Lisa stared at the photo of the three of them, the man, the children, and herself. So we were all just pieces in his perfect picture. He was just moving us around to fit his story. The bride nodded. But that story's over now. Lisa stood, walked to the window, and watched her daughter drawing in the front yard. Do you think people will believe us? She asked. He's so good at twisting things. They already do, the bride replied. We've got support. We've got proof. And most importantly, we're not alone. Later that evening, the bride returned home, where her best friend was waiting. On the table sat a new folder. Legal advice, a drafted statement, names of others who had reached out with similar stories. I'm thinking of going public, the bride said. Her friend looked at her. Are you sure? Once you do that, everything changes. The bride nodded. I'm not doing it to hurt him. I'm doing it to protect the ones he might hurt next. People deserve to know. Across town, Lisa tucked her daughter into bed and looked out the window. For the first time in weeks, she felt calm. Not because everything was fixed, but because the truth had finally been set free. In another part of the city, the groom sat in his apartment alone. His phone buzzed again, another friend distancing themselves, another client canceling. He was starting to feel what he'd made others feel for years, ignored, discarded, unseen. And the difference now? No one believed his version of the story anymore. 3 weeks had passed since the wedding that never was. The flowers were gone, the dress packed away, and the invitations that once felt like keepsakes were now just paper reminders of a day that took an unexpected turn. But for the bride, that day no longer marked heartbreak. It marked her awakening. Her life didn't fall apart. It was finally coming together. She hadn't heard from him since the confrontation. Not directly. But through mutual contacts, she knew things were falling for him. Fast. His job had placed him on leave pending an internal review. His name, once proudly displayed on company websites, had quietly disappeared. His law license was under investigation. Several women had come forward, some with stories that mirrored hers, others with accounts even more painful. But none of this gave her satisfaction, because this was never about revenge. It was about the truth, and making sure no one else walked blindly into a web of well-spoken lies and carefully staged love stories. One quiet afternoon, she visited the small local cafe where she used to meet him for coffee. This time, she sat across from Lisa, and between them was a laptop. They were launching something new, a support network for women and men who had experienced emotional manipulation, financial deception, or betrayal from partners who lived double lives. It started as a simple idea, a safe space, a place to be heard, to connect, to rebuild. They called it the second truth. It's not just about what happened to us, she said, scrolling through the website layout. It's about what we do now, how we protect the next person, Lisa nodded, and how we raise kids who won't grow up thinking this kind of love is normal. Outside the cafe window, Eli was helping his mom set up a table for a fundraiser they were hosting. Small bracelets with the word truth on them were laid out in neat rows. When the bride went outside, Eli ran up to her with a shy grin. "We sold 4 already." She knelt beside him. "You started all this, you know," he shrugged. "I just didn't want you to get hurt." "And I didn't want you to feel like your voice didn't matter," she replied. "You reminded me how much courage can live in a quiet person." From across the street, a woman watched. She had a stroller, a tired expression, and the look of someone who'd been holding a lot in for a long time. Slowly, she approached. "Are you the ones who started that website?" she asked gently. "The one for people who've been lied to?" They nodded. She hesitated, then said, "I think I need help. My husband, he's not who I thought he was." They invited her to sit. By the end of the hour, the woman was crying, but not out of hopelessness, out of relief. Because for the first time in a long time, she felt seen. Later that evening, the bride returned home to a small apartment she now shared with her best friend, who had refused to let her start over alone. The place was cozy, humble, full of plans, instead of pressure. On her desk sat the wedding box, not the one with rings and vow cards, but the one she now kept with all the messages women had sent her. Emails, screenshots, letters, some from strangers, others from people she'd met at the wedding. Each one telling a story of silence finally broken. She added a new one to the box. A note from Amy, Lisa's daughter. It read, "Thank you for telling the truth about my dad. I don't feel like it's my fault anymore. I want to help other kids feel okay too." She read it 3 times before setting it down carefully. The next morning, she and Lisa were invited to speak at a local community event. Not as victims, but as advocates, survivors, leaders. Lisa shared her story first. Her voice didn't shake. Her head didn't lower. She talked about the shame, the confusion, and the pain. But she also talked about how healing starts when we stop hiding. Then came the bride's turn. She stepped up to the microphone and looked out at the small crowd. "You know," she began, "a few weeks ago, I stood in front of 100 people in a white dress, ready to start a life with someone who I thought loved me. Instead, I discovered I was standing at the edge of a lie, one that stretched deeper than I ever imagined. But walking away from that altar was the first time I truly stepped into my life." She paused, letting the silence hold her truth. "I used to think truth came from answers, but I've learned it actually begins with questions. Who am I? What do I deserve? What am I willing to walk away from, even when it hurts?" She looked at Eli, who was sitting in the front row. And sometimes truth doesn't arrive with a grand speech. Sometimes it comes from the voice of a little boy standing at a gate, simply saying, "Don't marry him. He's lying." The room was quiet. Then a few claps. Then more. And soon, the sound of hands meeting hands filled the space like applause was meant for something bigger than words, like it was meant for healing itself. That night, back at home, she opened her old wedding ring box one last time. Inside, the diamond still sparkled, but now it meant nothing to her. She placed it in a small envelope and labeled it, Donation, Education Fund, for Eli, for Amy, for the kids who would never have to grow up believing lies were normal. As she looked out the window at the quiet city lights, she smiled, not because her story had a happy ending, but because she'd finally taken the pen back and started writing it herself. Not as a bride, but as something even stronger. A woman who chose truth.